Are you thinking of moving to Columbia, South Carolina? Are you thinking of buying a home in Columbia, Blythewood, Elgin, or any of the surrounding areas? If so, this video is for you. And today we are going to be talking about what we think is the most challenging aspect of buying a home here in the Midlands. And that video starts right now. Hi, my name is Cameron Flemming, team lead of the Flemming team. I want to take a second to say thank you for tuning into our channel, liking, and subscribing. We're going to be talking about how to get your offer accepted in today's market. This is one of the biggest challenges that we face, as when we're putting in offers for properties, the seller is likely to be choosing from 10, 20, in some cases 50 offers I've seen the seller had the option of choosing from. So today I'm going to be going through the contract that we use to buy homes in Columbia, South Carolina, and we are going to outline each space where you can gain an advantage over your competition in the contract. So make sure that you watch to the end, because there's going to be some really important stuff at the bottom part of the contract. So I want to make sure that you have all the tools required to find the home that you like and not let the home select you. All right, guys, so let's jump into it. And we are going to start with what a lot of people think, a lot of buyers think is the most important component of an offer, and that is the purchase price. And while the purchase price is very important when we are competing against so many other offers, in my opinion, it is not the most important term of your offer. So in today's market, what I will say about purchase price is it is a lot of times very particular to the property and where the home was listed at originally in terms of pricing, and how many offers are in on the table in terms of, you know, what I would recommend a buyer to offer in terms of purchase price. But here's what I will tell you is rule of thumb, and that is, if you're dealing with a multiple offer situation, which almost 99% of the time we're going to be facing right now in today's market, you want to at least be willing to go over $10,000 over ask. That's not going to be a requirement every time, and trust your real estate agent to gauge, what makes sense in terms of an offer. But at least 10,000. Really, if you're looking at some of the lower side of price points. So if you're looking in under 200,000, really you're really looking at going at least $15,000 over asking price. And so I like to share that with my buyers up front, because if you have a pre-approval for 175, well, really we need to be looking at homes around 160, right? So we have the leverage in the room to go after the property that you really like. So those are my thoughts about section 3 of the contract, purchase price, and how you can gain an advantage over the competition. All right, next up, let's talk earnest money. And if you don't know what earnest money is, I'll include a link down in the description to our video on what is earnest money, right? But for those who do know what earnest money is, let's talk about how much earnest money we need to put down. So we recommend putting down anywhere from 1 to 2% in terms of earnest money. And when I say 1 to 2%, 1 to 2% of the purchase price. So let's say the purchase price is $2,000. We recommend putting at least $2,000 down in terms of earnest money. Sellers care about how earnest you are in terms of purchasing the home, especially when they're comparing your offer to so many other offers. So we want to make sure that our offer is not getting a serious look just because we're unwilling to put down enough earnest money. Now, a pro tip that I can tell you, a place where I think you can gain an advantage here in the contract in terms of earnest money is So if you watch our video on Earnest Money, you know that there's a space where the buyer can back out of the contract for any reason during the first 10 days the first 10 business days of the contract, and they consider that the due diligence period. So during that time, the buyer can back out of the contract for any reason. What I've seen from the sellers that I have worked with and the offers that they are accepting, a lot of those offers are creating earnest money that's non-refundable, right? They're not only showing that they're earnest by putting up a certain amount of earnest money, but they're showing that they're earnest about moving forward with the property by saying, hey, we're going to put down this earnest money, and some or all of the earnest money is a non-refundable deposit that we're willing to offer the seller in order to have the seller go with our offer and take the home off the market from all the other offers that they've received. So that's a pro tip in a space where you can gain an advantage by simply offering a non-refundable earnest money deposit. All right, so next, section 5 of the contract. And this is going to be talking about closing costs. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because basically every agent in our market, anybody, if you've been putting in any offers, if you're selling a house, you know that in times past, seller might have been willing to pay some of buyer's closing costs. Right now, the seller's not going to pay your closing costs. It's not going to happen. So just know that when we're in a multiple offer situation, and really just any offer situation, trying to purchase a home here in the Columbia area, the seller's not going to pay your closing costs. So one of the things that I have tough conversations with my clients about is if we don't have enough money to pay our own closing costs, we can try to think of creative solutions, but ultimately that may just be a space where maybe you're not ready to buy a home right now. Maybe you need to, save some more money so that you are able to pay your own closing costs. As a matter of fact, what I've seen in some offers is buyers are willing to pay some of the seller's closing costs. And a lot of buyers don't know this, but the seller's closing costs are a lot more expensive than buyer closing costs. So while buyer closing costs, you're looking at probably around $5,500 or so, depending on the neighborhood that you move into, seller closing costs are likely to be, $30,000, if not more. So what I'm seeing some buyers willing to do, if you want to gain an advantage in this space, be willing to pay some portion of the seller's closing costs. And so this transaction cost component of the contract really comes down to, making sure that you're prepared in terms of having enough money to purchase a home. All right, so next up, section 6 of the contract. This section is financing. So I'm gonna be brief on financing as well. The type of loan that you can get typically is the type of loan that you can get. I will say when I'm talking to a seller, I love to see a conventional loan. So if you can get a conventional loan, talk to your lender about what's best for you. But as a seller's agent, we love to see a conventional loan. Typically it means that the buyer is, pretty well qualified. Now, with that being said, one of the biggest challenges that I see, especially from people moving to the area, is lender choice. So one of the huge hurdles that you will face is who you choose in terms of lender matters when you submit your offer, right? So one of the things that I always discourage my buyers from doing is going with big box lenders like Quicken Loans or Rocket Mortgage or Bank of America or even your credit unions. What sellers agents and thus sellers want to see in terms of the lender that you select is a trusted local lender, right? And the reason is because big box lenders have a bad reputation for not closing or not closing on time or just being a pain throughout the process. So when we're competing against so many different offers, it's important that we go with a lender that the agents can trust, right? Because the agents are a big mover of this project, of this process. I guess it is a project, but this process, the agents are a big mover of the process. So you want to make sure that you get with a lender that agents in our area trust, right? And if you need recommendations for those type of lenders, reach out to me. Let me know. I'm gonna include a link. You can reach out to our team in terms of our phone number. So I'll include that link down below. But if you need a recommendation for a local lender, and I highly recommend it if you're moving to our area, because you'll be putting in offers and you might have had the best terms, but because you had a lender like Quicken Loans, the seller's not taking your offer serious. So again, let us know if you need recommendations there. Now, another part of the financing contingency is the appraisal contingency. And if you don't know what appraisal is, please watch our video on the home buying process step by step. But for those who know what an appraisal is, basically if we put in an offer for a home and the appraiser comes out and deems that the value is has not reached the level of where the offer came in, then there will be an appraisal issue, right? Because the lender will only lend up to the appraised value of the home. So this is a space in the contract where, and I think it's maybe one of the biggest spaces that I've seen people being able to win deals, win the property that they want by addressing the appraisal contingency up front, right? So one of the things that you can do, and this especially holds true if you are doing a conventional loan with 20% down, a lot of times your lender can waive the appraisal altogether, right? So if we can waive the appraisal altogether, then that makes your finance loan, almost as good as cash. So that may be one thing to look at. Now, if you don't have the option of waiving the appraisal altogether, another thing that you can do to give yourself an advantage in terms of competitive advantage, and I'll be honest, most of the contracts that my sellers are accepting have this type of wording in the contract, and that is the buyer is willing to pay the difference in a short appraisal. So that is another space where you can gain an advantage over the competition. So you can be, in the top, 1, 2, 3 contracts. It's not always about the purchase price, right? Because if you go in and you offer $50,000 over the purchase price, but you still have an appraisal contingency, you're really just kind of blowing smoke. So what we need to do is we need to figure out, hey, look, what amount are we willing to pay above the appraised value if we run into an appraisal issue? And I've had many buyers win with doing something like this. And, in some cases, the appraiser comes out there and we get the value. For instance, I just had a home for actually one of my sellers where the buyer came in $20,000 over asking. The buyer agreed up front that if the appraisal came in short, that they would pay the difference. But what ended up happening is, although they came in $20,000 over asking, because the market is so robust, another home closed within that time frame, right? And they did that. Ultimately, the home appraised, right? They didn't even have to come out that additional $20,000. Now, we want to look at this thing from a candid and reasonable way. So, we want to make sure that if we're saying, hey, we'll pay, $5,000 of a short appraisal, that we actually have the money and that we're going to do it. But in a lot of instances that I've seen, the home actually appraises. So it's another way that you can make your offer stand out by raising your hand and saying, hey, look, we know that we're offering significantly over your asking price, and you may be nervous about appraisal, and so let's handle that up front. So that's another way that you can use the financing contingency to have the seller accept your offer. All right, so next up, we're going to talk about conveyance date or close date, Section 7 of the contract. And I hope by now you've realized that every term of the contract matters when you're dealing with a multiple offer situation. We're kind of just drumming right through all the sections and trying to help you gain an advantage there. But so as far as the closing date, what I recommend is, create a range of close date that you're okay with as a buyer, and allow the seller to select the close date. A lot of times the seller needs to be somewhere on a certain date, and if we can be willing to allow the seller to pick the close date, that's going to help us out. Be one of the offers that's actually in consideration. And that's what we're trying to do, guys. We want to be one of the one or two offers that's in consideration. That way we can have conversations with the agent and kind of negotiate to help you to get the property, right? If we're dealing with 20 offers and we're in the bottom 17, chances are that agent isn't going to have conversations with your agent to be able to help you to get the home. So again, in terms of close date, let the seller pick. All right, guys, so moving right along, Section 8 of the contract. How can we gain an advantage here? Section 8 and Section 9 of the contract talk about, your right to inspect the property, due diligence, and how repair negotiations should go, right? My recommendation here, in order to gain an advantage when you're submitting an offer, and pretty much every offer that I've seen my sellers accept has been, has had this provision that I'm going to recommend to you, and that is offer to purchase the property as is with due diligence, right? And so what that means is we are going to purchase the property as is. We're not going to ask for repairs to be made on the property, but the one caveat to that is we are going to do due diligence, right? And through due diligence, we are going to see if there are any major items that need to be addressed with the home. Now, if there are major items that need to be addressed with the home, as a buyer, you still have options, right? But in this market, sellers are just simply not going to be willing to do the type of repairs that they were in time past. So I recommend offering as is with due diligence, doing your due diligence, and then having a conversation with your real estate agent around what is truly considered a major item. And then, once you guys have that conversation, you have other options, right? But in today's market, you pretty much have to offer as is with due diligence. All right, guys, so there's two other spaces in the contract that I want to talk about, and that's Section 16 and Section 18. And basically these sections of the contract are additional contingency contracts. Section 16 talks about a sale and or closing contingency. And basically what that means is we're submitting this offer to the seller, but we will follow through only if your current home sells, right? And so my recommendation there in terms of trying to get an advantage over the competition is let's talk about other options to protect ourselves if you need to sell a home. Let's not ask the seller to choose our offer over several offers that may not have that same contingency, right? And if you have more questions about the sale and closing contingency, let me know. I've also done a video on buying and selling at the same time, so check that video out. You'll get a little bit more information there. But basically, we don't want to have to ask the seller to accept your offer on the chance that your home may sell. So those are my thoughts there. And then lastly, let's talk about Section 18. Section 18 is basically where you would put other terms, that you would like to be included on the contract. And in today's market, if those other terms don't benefit the seller, I'd recommend thinking about leaving them out. Again, when we're competing with so many other offers, the last thing we want to do is lose a home over, a small item that that's on your wish list in terms of other terms. So if we can, let's not come up with any other terms. Let's make it a clean contract and give the seller, the best opportunity to choose our offer. So that's what I have, guys, for you. How to get your offer accepted. Let me know if you have any additional questions down in the comment. I love to answer them. But until next time, guys, peace.